Hi there, it's Richard Little from Your Land Partner, joining you again for video 55 out of 100. One video per day, one piece of content per day. It's been videos every day so far. Started out not going to be the case, but that's what we're doing. That's what we're getting some of the better feedback from. And you know, as with most things, you've got to make your own notes. So you know, but the videos will be there for people to you know, watch over and over again, and they are going to be put into some sort of sensible order and easy to search for, etc., etc. I think that's coming quite soon. There's some pretty decent stuff, even if we do say so ourselves, that's gone on so far. So yeah, so video 55, as I say, we're in the middle of what it now looks like at least 12 videos talking about planning. And as those of you who haven't watched any of them before, those videos will vary between 10 and 40 minutes, depending on what we're talking about, and if I go off on a tangent or whatever, or Bryn is prone to doing that as well. It's not just me; he just thinks it's me. But yeah, anyway. And so today, going to be talking about pre-application advice. So just going to really explain, this is the formal pre-application advice. This is what we're going to talk about. So we've now started the sort of 7 or 8 videos now on the process, you know, from the pre-application through to the planning application and everything that comes beyond that. So we are massive advocates of the pre-app process, and we have over the years have quite a lot of conversations with the planning teams, particularly some of the planning consultants who have considered it to be a waste of time, and there's still some that believe that. Fortunately, there's getting less and less, and more are buying into the process. I think, to be fair, they're seeing the value in it. It's easy to pull it apart, so let's start of what it is really. So it's an application before an application. It's still an application, so the pre-application. So it's actually just to get that initial feedback, that initial sort of thinking from the local authority. Now you can do this on with something that you don't have a lot of detail on, and generally the very minimum that you'll need to give them is the site location and probably a bit of a scheme layout, a bit of a sketch. It doesn't, we're not submitting, you know, necessarily formal drawings or anything like that. It's a little bit rough and ready. We have had pre-apps where we've just drawn it out, you know, just felt pen, and any of you know what my drawing's like. It's pretty basic, but that's good enough. It's actually very much getting that dialogue going with the planning department, the planning officers, if you like. So it's an application, yeah. So it will generally take between 2 and 6 weeks, and being realistic, yeah, some authorities, particularly when they've got, well, they're always overworked, they're always short-staffed, but particularly at the moment anyway, it's fair to say that a bit more disruption around. We've had 2 in the last few months, and they've both taken probably, I'd say, 7 and 9 or 11 weeks, something like that. Now, what you provide them with is say, it's up to you. That they need to know what the site location is, and they will ask on their forms for loads of stuff. They'll ask for drawings often, and we've seen all sorts of things. They're asking almost for the stuff, so it's a full application. Well, you don't need to provide everything they ask for, because effectively you're paying a fee. Yeah, generally there are quite a number of authorities that offer the pre-application service, if you like, for free. Our rule of thumb there is generally, if it's free, you don't get much of a service, and they don't care if they don't hit the deadlines, etc., etc. So we find them much more valuable in areas where you are paying a fee. And so typically the fees for us, so the last 2 that we've put in, I'll probably be corrected by one of the team, but I think one of them was for something like 60 units, and the other one was 80, 90, maybe 100 units, something like that. So fair size schemes. And again, I stand to be corrected, but neither of those cost. They both cost somewhere between £1,000 and £2,000. Now that could be quite a lot of money, perhaps for some people, but we're talking about quite big schemes. So we know of pre-app service. So if it's one unit, the smaller the development, generally the smaller the cost, the lower the cost. And I think the lowest we've had is around about £200. Now, what we say here is one of the reasons that we do it. One of the reasons to do it is actually it gets us an early feel of what the local authority's stance may be. Now, you've got to bear in mind right at the beginning that it is advice, and it's advice given by sometimes just one officer. They may well, depending on the size of the proposal may well have gone out to one or two other interested parties like highways, etc., to get their early feel. So it's not just their opinion, but it's not binding. It's the whole planning process isn't binding, so there is obviously the whole raft of disclaimers to say at the end, that this isn't binding, blah 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 blah. But that's not the point. What we're trying to do is we're trying to find, just to get a temperature gauge, really, a temperature check, just to see how they feel about it. I mean, to be perfectly blunt with you or honest with you, we pretty much always know what they're going to say, but we still do it. We do it for another reason, which I'll come on to. But we think it's really good value, whatever they say, because most of the stuff we go in for pre-app for, we know it's going to be a negative response, particularly at the moment. A lot of the stuff we're doing, but we have probably been more pleasantly surprised. In fact, one that's in planning now. Yeah, no, I think it's about to go into planning now. It was probably one of the most positive pre-app meetings that we had actually had. And even I was quite sort of thought, well, wow, okay. I thought, well, yeah, quite positive about it coming out. But bear in mind, it is only advice. Yeah, but most of you will be engaging with planning consultants, and you're paying them for their advice. And as I say, a scheme, our examples there of between 60 and 80, 90 units or whatever it is, and it's say it's £1,500 each. That's quite a low investment for us on a scheme of that size. And if you're looking at one or two houses, it might be £200, £300, £400 or so. But we would always suggest that you do that. There will, no doubt, there will be the odd one or two where even we probably wouldn't do it. But we haven't done any for ages without using the pre-app process. It's part of engaging with the local authority and the officers that are going to be helping to determine your application. So it's not about getting them on board particularly, it's to find out what their thinking is. So time wise, say 2 to 6 weeks, but generally more. So there is a cost. You can find that out on your local planning authority. Just look on their website, and it's quite clearly laid out there. And say there'll be a form, and you don't have to supply all the stuff that they ask for there. Most of you, if you haven't done it before, it is something you can do yourself. But we would always suggest that you don't go into this without have had some planning advice, because you don't really want to start something that we can always go back in and unpick it afterwards, and we do. But it's much better if you start down the right road. Asking for or asking for comment on a proposal that is sort of in and around where you want it to sit. Yes, it probably will be asking for more, as the normal negotiation tactics sort of still applies. Ask for more, be prepared to accept for a little bit less, sort of thing. So in terms of detail, as I've already said, now for us, again, you won't be seeing this the right way. So we will normally have a supporting statement or something with it. So it's quite a lengthy document, with all sorts of images and stuff. You can't really see that, sorry, but so we do invest quite a lot of money in the pre-app process. So it's not just the cost of the application; it's the paperwork that goes with it. So we that information, that document, becomes part of the planning application at a later date, but it may well be tweaked once we get their input on it. So the amount of detail is really up to you, but the more you give, the more you'll get a response about. So at the moment, bit sketchy as to what response you might get from some local authorities. Some you can pay for the written service. We always, where it's possible, will pay additional. Sometimes it's additional, sometimes it's included, to have a meeting. Now, obviously, they're virtual, but previously, obviously, on site or in the planning department, we don't need to go on site, so we normally will go for the planning department because it's easier for them. It's all about making their life easier. But that's definitely another video for another day. So you pay your fee, put the application in, pay your fee, and you submit whatever detail it is you decide to do, and your planning advisors decide to put forward, and then we'll get a response. Yes, you'll probably have to remind them perhaps once or twice that you're waiting for a response, and don't be afraid to do that. Don't worry about, as I've said previously, don't worry about upsetting them. Don't be rude or unprofessional or anything, but don't worry about reminding them. It's the same old thing. Chances are that they that shout loudest will get dealt with first, and the planning officer in most cases isn't going to go against your scheme because you've been a nuisance on the phone or whatever, so don't worry about that. So either yourself or whoever's handling the application for you, make sure that you're driving it forward. So it's the response. It's the response we're looking for, because what are they going to tell us in that response? And largely they should be telling you, what they think about the scheme or the proposal in relation to their local policies, so the local planning policies. They're not going to be talking about necessarily the MPPF. Just put that to one side for now. Local planning policies. So you're going to get some guidance as to what they're actually looking at, and you're not concentrating obviously on the bits that they're happy with. You're going to concentrate on the things that they say, this scheme won't comply with policy whatever because of. So you will get, so what the response is, what we're looking for is a full response. So they're actually not just saying no, it doesn't comply to policy. We're looking for a reason. Now, you won't always get that in the response, so we'll go back and ask them. We've paid them a fee, we want a response. So we had in fact both of the last two for different reasons, and we will definitely come on to those as a sort of bit of case study or stories at future videos. Is they're both offered to refund the fee. And in one case it was because their response, they couldn't give us a full response as we wanted to, and so we've actually gone with that because that was just poor timing. It was unlucky. It caught the start of the coronavirus thing, and so but we're revisiting that one. Not too far into the future. But when you pay for something, then you can demand, if you like, a certain level of service, and if you push it, you will get it. So what we're looking for is what their stance will be when this goes into an application. So can we tweak our proposals if they're quite advanced to actually take into account of something that maybe our team haven't thought of or didn't think it would be so important or feature so important in a particular planning officer's view. So again, it's the planning officer's view that you're also normally getting, not necessarily the whole department or the whole authority. So you have to also take that into account. So we're only looking for the negatives. We're just looking for those things, and that's why we put a supporting statement or something like that together to go with it, because we are pointing out the good bits, the bad bits, the bits that we're going to struggle with. And so we'll typically, like quite a few of ours at the moment, are in what people would probably call greenbelt or greenfield, or on the edge of settlements. So there's a lot of things about landscape, particularly in certain areas, and so we make sure that we cover in our supporting the statement that we know you're going to be bothered about landscape, and this is what we've either already done about it or this is what we're going to do about it. So don't just send us a letter back to say you just can't do it because the landscape's too valuable. So it's understanding how much information. The more information you give them, the more you should get back. And if they don't give it back straight away, you follow it. You're persistent. They always talk about the two P's: patience and persistence, and you need them in differing measures at different points in the whole process of development. But you persistence without patience, you'll just become a nuisance, and you'll suffer all sorts of issues. And patience without persistence means you'll just get left to the end. And it just happens all the time. So again, so many stories. But sorry, going back to pre-app, so what I want to sort of just finish up on, the last sort of main point I want to make. 2 points. Let's think about it. So at the moment, pre-applications are what we call closed door, so they're confidential. Now, so you can make a pre-application on land that you don't own or whatever. You can do that. Yeah. Now it's treated as closed door within planning departments. That doesn't mean to say that you can always guarantee that stuff doesn't get out. So again, that's always for another day. But it is confidential. However, should your proposal go forward into an application, then the information and the whole pre-app process and parts of that pre-app process can be requested under a freedom of information, or there's also an environmental assessment that can be actually called in on. So other people can, in the future, get access to what those negotiations were, what the application was, any to-in and fro-in. So you'll find that a lot of the stuff that you'll get from the planning officers will be very, very formal, and it's done that. So that's why we like the meeting. That's where we actually get the meeting, or these days virtual meeting or a phone call. That's where we get off the record stuff. Now, some of the stuff they tell you they will not put in writing, yeah, because they know at some point that paperwork could get audited or it could get scrutinised, even internally, not just externally. So that's why it's important to actually not just the paperwork stuff, because that's going to be very black and white. It's still valuable, but so I will now finish up on the last thing. So the last thing really here is why we really do it. The main driver for this, and everything else I've said already is very relevant, and we would still do it. But the main driver here is it's create a tick box exercise for us, purely in terms of the planning process and the strategy. Our planning strategy every time is we will always strategize and plan to go to appeal. If you haven't been through the pre-app process, i.e. you haven't entered dialogue with a local authority, and we also do enter dialogue with the community and that as well prior to that. Don't have to do that, but that's also a good thing. We'll get into that now. But, so if you haven't done that, that's probably not going to help you. It's not going to mean you're going to get it refused on that, but it's when you get to planning, it's the edges, it's the little percentages. You can do 80% of everything right, but it's the other 20% that you've missed off. You haven't invested enough money, and you haven't done the tick box. And part of that tick box now, very much so throughout the certainly throughout England, is. It is a little bit frowned upon if you're not using the pre-app process. It doesn't mean to say that you can't, you have to do it. I'm not saying that, but we will pretty much always do it, as I've previously said, because we always plan to go to appeal. We don't want to go to appeal, but it's there. It's our backup, and so the pre-app process. So it's that's a reason to do it in itself. But when you couple it with the fact we're going to get some information, we actually want to know what they think. We don't want to go on our own thoughts. We might think we've done it before, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, we'll do this, we'll do that. But it's good to get some reaction from the other side, should we say. So, all in all, the formal pre-application process, in our view, I know it takes time, but we would always say that, maybe 10, 12 weeks or whatever it is invested at the front end, we'll save that a later date. You can't ever prove it, but the number of applications that go in and that then get pushed back out, and then you have to amend it and then perhaps go in again, you end up spending perhaps the same amount of time and or maybe even more time. So it's not about the time. It's about giving yourself the best possible chance of getting the planning consent for a scheme that's going to work for you and your partners, your business, your clients, whatever that might be. So we would pretty much always say, unless there's a really, really good reason not to do it, we would always suggest that it's done. So probably leave it there. Yeah, let's leave it there. Right. So that's planning. That's the 55th video, I think, in a series of 100. Pre-application, the formal pre-application process. Yeah. So hopefully there's a few bits in there that are useful. And I'm going to sign off now and going to catch you another day. Take care.